everybody, and welcome to episode 63 of the Vassals of Kingsgrave Epic Linear Song of Ice and Fire Reread. My name's Bina007, and I'll be your host today, and I am joined by #Greg.
Hello, this is Greg, ClaudiusTheFool on the forums. Happy to be here.
Also by Varley Mo Varley.
Varley Mo Varley on the forums.
And by Patrick.
Greetings, mortals. It is I, Patrick the Tall, Patrick in real life.
And we're going to be joined in a few moments by the OG Vassal, the OG Curator, Glen. So just to let you all know or remind you, this episode could contain spoilers for all published works in A Song of Ice and Fire, potentially the TWOW preview chapters, but we'll let you know if that's happening. The last episode of the Reread ended with the death of Lysa in Sansa 7 on February 9th, 300 AL. In this episode, we're going to cover Sam 4, John 11, Sam 5, and John 12 from A Storm of Swords, which takes place on the same day and the next day, 10th of February, and is basically the big election of John at the very end of Storm of Swords. So after Sansa 7, we move back just 4 chapters, but stay on the same day to Sam 4. It's going to be #Greg doing the chapter summary, apparently in a Roy Dotrice accent. We actually don't know how old Sam is, which is kind of weird to me, but John is 17 years old at this point. So over to #Roy.
Samwell 4. Sam and Gilly return to Castle Black after passing through the Black Gate under the Night Fort. He finds Castle Black and the wall swarm with the knights and attendants of Stannis Baratheon, following the Battle of Castle Black. Sam is told of the wildling assault, arrival and ultimate victory of Stannis Baratheon, as well as the capture of Mance Rayder and the return of Jon Snow amid rumours that he is a Turncloak. Sam asks Jon if he thinks it's a good idea to lie about sending Gilly to Horn Hill and his family and telling them that her baby is a bastard. The Brothers of the Night's Watch have begun voting for the next Lord Commander, but after several choosings, no one has the requisite 2/3 votes to win. The main contenders are Sir Dennis Mallister of the Shadow Tower, Sir Cotter Pike of Eastwatch, Lord Janus Slint of Castle Black, along with several lesser contenders, including Bowen Marsh, Othel Yarwick, Three-Fingered Hob, and Dolorous Ed Tollett. The chapter ends with Pip convincing Sam that he should try talking to some of the other candidates and convince them to put their votes behind another.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Very good.
I got the Samwell down, and then I just went vaguely British, but I'm happy.
I feel that all future chapter summaries should be done in a comedy accent. That was fantastic.
I was not doing a Glen accent. I know Glen's here, but I wasn't offending Glen. I was offending Roy Dotrice.
Was that actually supposed to be a comedy accent, though?
I don't know. It's tough to stay in character and read stuff at the same time.
Also, I would say you're pretty safe that didn't sound anything like Glen's accent. So
no, I know, but I have been known to try to do a Scottish accent around Glen. So.
yeah.
Thoughts, notes on the chapter?
This is basically the election of the Republican Constitutional Convention of 1860.
Huh? Say what now?
Jon Snow is Lincoln. He was way behind in the first couple votes, and then I'd say Dennis Mallister is Seward because he was always leading, and then his votes started coming down, and then everybody had to gang together to push Lincoln to the fore. So that's my 2 cents.
And who was the guy they were trying to block out?
Basically, Seward and I'm drawing a blank. Sam and Chase, because they were like the forerunners, but their people couldn't agree. So like they were like, let's go with this guy that we kind of like instead of the people that we hate. So they went with their like 5th choice instead of their 1st, 2nd, or 3rd choice.
So is Buchanan like Dolorous Ed or something?
No, Buchanan wasn't running because he was awful and he wasn't Republican. He knew the Civil War was coming, so he was bowing out.
Should we take a break and just introduce Glen? Glen, do you want to say hi to the listeners?
Hi there, it's Glen here, Dagos from the forums.
Awesome. Actually, the way this election reminded me of, I've just finished reading Robert Harris's book Conclave about the election of a pope, and it reminded me of that, going through the iterations and how the votes can sort of fluctuate and form alliances.
Also the whole you're locked in until you actually decide on anything.
Yeah.
Well, that will come later, but of course, yeah.
But it doesn't have the ball chair.
Yeah. See, people don't know what you're referencing, Matt.
Matt, do you want to explain what the ball chair is?
So it's like this toilet that this pope, the potential pope has to sit on so they can examine his testicles and make sure he's a man.
Yeah. Apparently this is a real thing. This came about because I was watching, there was a TV show on British TV tonight about the coronation So the anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II being crowned, and she's commenting on the footage. And I hadn't realised there's a bit in our coronation ceremony where the person wanting to become sovereign has to turn and face the Lord so they can sort of affirm that it's her for real, to avoid any kind of fake aria situations with some rant who marches up the red carpet and wants to become king. But yeah, I didn't realise there was a ball chair.
There's also a scene in The Young Pope that do the same thing.
Yeah, I brought it up because I saw it on the Borgias, but then Bina kind of called me out on it, so I had to go to the interwebs to back up my silly knowledge.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And like everything, the internet proved me right.
and wrong at the same time.
Significance of John dreaming about crypts and dead kings rather than ghost. That's quite unusual in the context of these books.
Well, it makes sense because he's in the later chapter. John thinks about. I mean, we basically know that the wall is basically like a giant, magic wall. So it walls off also magic and all those abilities as well. That's why the others can't pass under.
Wait a minute, what? So we know, there's spells like woven into the wall, but are we saying that he isn't having his warg dreams because he's on the other side of the wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Gotcha.
Oh.
That's it. That's basically it. That's why you also put the others or the White Walkers inside the wall, and they don't reawaken.
Oh my god, I felt so stupid I didn't figure that out. Okay.
Oh. Yeah, but do they try that? I know John references it, right? Like to put one of them in the ice cell and in Dance with Dragons, and then I don't know if anything comes of it.
Okay, I got the impression, at least. Maybe I also am elaborating on stuff, but I think I got the impression that also works with the White Walkers. That's basically why also Black. What was it? What? Sorry, I blanked out the guy who leads Bran and people.
Cold Hands?
Cold Hands?
Yeah, why he can't pass under the wall.
Right, because he's a white. But you can bring them over because in the first book they brought over the two guys and then they woke up and.
Yeah, they wake up on the other side, but underneath the wall they're not active at all.
Huh. Cool.
That's at least my impression.
The first time you were reading this, did you think that it was leading towards John being elected? Because he's never actually. It's really not until the next chapter where they start having the rumblings. Because it seemed like I mean they'll assume it's going to be Dennis Mallister or Cotter Pike.
I don't think so, because the chapter that I'm about to cover kind of led me to believe that John would be taking a different path and kind of becoming Lord of the North.
Yeah, I think that's what I thought at the same as well. That this was going to be the big turning point where he abandoned the wall. It was just a short-term exercise for him.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I thought, but the only things that I underlined in this chapter from my first read is all just Dolores Ed's quotes. It's just me writing Ed, exclamation point, Ed, exclamation point. So that's what I was focused on.
Give us a couple good Dolores Ed quotes from this chapter.
Well, it's pretty much all of them. Where we talked about what's the guy's name who fell off the Bridge of Skulls, and he's like, oh, he's so lucky to land on the rocks.
Yeah. I mean, there's an axe in his face that killed him, but
but not landing on the rocks. Yeah. And then about complaining that please stop voting for me because I would make an awful Lord Commander, but so would all of these others. That was a good one too.
I mean, is there any version of this story where if Dolores Ed becomes Lord Commander, anyone would be disappointed?
Well, we can't talk about TV show spoilers, can we?
What's that? No, but I mean, they're going to have an election if John's dead, right?
Are you talking about contemporary story,
in the books?
I mean, at this point, or where the books end? You mean
where the books end?
Oh,
in the next book, if Dolores Ed becomes Lord Commander, who would be disappointed?
No, nobody.
But would he be good?
Yeah, I think he's he's just smart enough to defend the wall and not do anything too stupid.
Or noble.
Or noble, which can be stupid as well.
I'm too slow to unmute, but Dolores Ed would be disappointed. That's who.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually true. He would see it as the failure of the ultimate joke.
Yeah.
He's been playing a long game.
Yeah.
Did anyone think he was going to get elected just because he's John, it's the hero's journey? The kind of tinier criticism of this, it was just so inevitable.
Not in this chapter, I didn't.
Like,
But once
no.
the rumbling started, I did.
Yeah, only in retrospect, basically, for me.
Yeah.
Because yes, it makes sense for this build up, but I mean, there was enough red herrings for me to be at least thrown off the scent. I wanted him to be Lord of Winterfell again, and I'm basically just focused on that, I guess.
Same here.
Glenn, any thoughts on the chapter or points you'd like to make?
I think when I first read the books, I was hoping that I would have preferred if he had chosen Stannis' option, so that Stannis gave him the option of, Stannis would throw his support to him being, I guess, the king of the North. I would have liked to have seen where that story went rather than him being Lord Commander.
Yeah. I also think that in line with that, I mean, for me, I chewed up the next two books as well pretty quickly afterwards. So for me, it was even more of a letdown when I quickly found out that, it didn't go that very well for John. So, I mean, yeah, I was a bit let down by it as well. But I like it. I like it. If it wasn't for the other option, I would have liked this a lot.
Yeah. Anything else on the chapter, Amber? Or should we rattle on to the Sam?
It's not much. It's really just setting the stage for the next, the actual choosing. This is just the groundwork and Sam getting back. It's not a
I said
deep
my
chapter.
one thing that might.
Okie dokie. So after Sam 4, we move forward in linear order to John 11. It takes place on the same day. John remains 17, unsurprisingly. Apparently Davos is over 40, which I don't know why. It surprised me. I didn't think he was that old. Stannis is 36, and Melisandre is of uncertain age. So it's over to you, Matt. Varley, which accent are you going to choose to do your chapter summary in?
A hungover one?
You're not going to do a hello, Governor, Dick Van Dyke one?
No. No, I'll just crack on. All right. So this chapter is pretty straightforward. Basically, Stannis calls Jon up to the top of the wall, asks him to be Lord of the North, has some backhanded kind of comments, and Jon asks him for more time. So that's basically what all the chapter is. The one thing I did pick up, or I wanted to talk about, is that Stannis explicitly says, "Do not speak about this conversation to anyone." And yet, if Stannis had made it known that he wanted wildlings to resettle the gift, would that have prevented Jon's death in Dance with Dragons?
Oh.
Because Stannis says during this conversation, I want to resettle the North, with even giants, if they can bend the knee and, take R'hllor as their god. I want them all here because I want them on our side when the real enemy comes. And that's basically what Jon does, and they kill him for it. Thoughts?
Well, that's not the only reason, right? There was also a thing about marching against Winterfell with the Night's Watch.
Yeah, but I think that his whole alliance with the wildlings was really what alienated people, and then the pink letter or whatever was just the last straw.
Maybe.
I think it was the last straw, but they were grumbling about everything up till that point. But up until the whole marching on Winterfell, he had reasonable excuses, we need this is the right thing to do because of this, this, and this. And then going to Winterfell, it was just a rash personal decision that was the last straw for the conspirators. But I think if he hadn't have done that, they would have just sucked it up and realized, especially once the others were banging at their door, that this was the right thing to do. But who knows?
Yeah, but do you think his position would have been strengthened if Stannis was hey, this is what I want to do, and new Lord Commander's okay?
Actually, no, I don't think so. I think that making it seem like it was his own idea all the way will strengthen his position more so than otherwise, because I mean, not a lot of the people within the Night's Watch want Stannis to rule over them, basically. So they want to be neutral because that's always been their role. So I think that was actually a good idea in that sense.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know. That was the one thing that I took away from this reread. But there's also another thing where a couple chapters ago, didn't Jon jack up a guy with one hand, one of the guys that was sent to arrest him? And we get a physical description of Stannis, who towers over Jon. How tall is Stannis?
He's always tall. He's like tall and thin. That's usually how they describe him.
Yeah,
Right, he's super gaunt, he says, but like he towers over John.
yeah, but
John's still a kid.
and he's Robert's brother, Robert and Renly's brother.
Yeah,
I mean, they're of good stock, I would say. I mean, we don't know about. I mean, Eddard was never described as a tall person, so so his line, even though if it's not Eddard or if it's Lyanna, still maybe the Starks aren't really that tall in general.
yeah, and then this chapter is basically like, you know, the John angst, like, I don't know if I can be Lord of Winterfell, or like, this is what I always dreamed of, and now I'm feeling bad because I dreamed of it, and, you know, such a whiny little bastard.
You know, I'm going to defend John a little bit just because I'm on board with most of the, like, John is the trope of, you know, the prince who lost and, you know, come back and whiny. But, like, this is a genuine conundrum because, like, people already see him as a turncloak. And if he basically does this again, he's, like, 0 for 2 in honor in people's eyes, even though he's doing it for the right reasons. But he's already joined the Wildlings, come back, and now he's basically being given a free pass to leave the Night's Watch and go become a lord. You know?
Also, that's the whole thing later on when he thinks about the old gods and having to take R'hllor as his, or burn down the tree.
Yeah.
I mean, he right now the only thing he seems to be completely loyal to was the old gods. I mean, he chose the old gods to do his vows in front, even though he was with Ygritte. He still they still had the first men of the old gods to unite around, right? So in my perspective at least, that would be the final straw for him to lose his own bearing on where he was. So that was a big problem, at least.
I do like the backhanded thing that Melisandre says. She's like, you know, swearing an oath by the old gods is like swearing an oath to your shoes.
Yeah.
She is devoted.
Yeah.
The one comment I had on this chapter in particular is that because we're reading it in linear order, we've already done the Tyrion and Sansa chapters, and especially that last Tyrion one where he confronts Tywin is a total, and the Sansa one, they're kind of total data dumps on everything that had happened before, and a lot of these plots that have been set in motion in Game of Thrones, and we get the final definitive answers. So when we see Stannis being like completely sort of certain in himself about who killed Jon Arryn or who killed Robert, and they're arrogant about knowing the answer, and we're like, but we already know that you are wrong.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird because in a sense this whole period of Stannis's behavior and actions is what turns many people, including myself, into more of Stannis fans, but you still get that kind of that utter certainty and self-belief that's so smug and annoying within him. And that's definitely
he also he is very sure about, like, even though he's taken on the Lord of Light as his like banner, like, yes, he's sure about this stuff, but that's his decision about what you just mentioned is based on like actual facts, like what he's heard, not on like, I believe this because of the Red God, you know. So I give him a pass on that because he always kind of like takes a step back with the Red God stuff up to a point. I don't like the fact that we know he's wrong and we can rub it in his face, but yeah.
Leave Stannis alone.
No, I'm not a Stannis apologist.
No.
I did like the bit where he was questioning Jon about like the honor of the Wildlings, like name by name, Mance Rayder, Tormund, Lord of Bones, and part of this is like him planning ahead for when they're all under, you know, his command, but also I think he's sounding Jon out as to, is it worth saving Mance and sacrificing someone else, you know, in his place?
Yeah.
He gets his rattleshirt answer here, basically.
I love he calls Tormund of the many names.
Stannis is actually the one that brings up the whole, you know, like the Starks quote, when the cold winds rise and the lone wolf dies but the pack survives. Stannis actually uses that against Jon when he's trying to convince him. He says, when the cold winds rise, we shall live or die together. He's basically paraphrasing that. But I don't know if he would know that quote from like Ned, or if that's just something that is like a common quote that, you know, people from different areas have different sayings for. But I did like that he was trying to use that for Jon to take his offer. Also,
I get like the animosity between Stannis and Ned because basically Robert loved Ned more than his own brother. Yeah. But like, do they not like hang out at all? Because it seems like they didn't.
I don't think Stannis was hanging out with many people.
Hangs out with Davos. Hangs out with Melisandre.
Well, he doesn't hang out. He doesn't go like,
Yeah.
so do you want to watch a movie or something like that, or watch The Burning? I mean, I don't
He
I don't
Netflix and chills with Melisandre. They
think...
make little shadow babies.
Yeah.
Only
Yeah,
when he
maybe.
has to.
Yeah, he's doing his duty. I don't know. I don't see him as a chill person.
Okay, so anything else in the chapter?
We get kind of a little more description of Melisandre being magical and warm.
Quite literally hot stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Well, with that, we can motor on from from John 11 to Sam 5. So we skip over the final massive Tyrion 11 chapter where he kills Tywin and get to Sam 5, which is the next day on 10th of February, 300 AL, and it is Glen with the chapter summary. Glen, will you be doing your chapter summary in the voice of Rhoda Treese or in your own voice?
I feel like I should learn to do some sort of American accent
Don't.
as revenge.
There's a reason
no,
Americans read in English accents.
I'll
Do a
just
Boston
do
accent,
the normal
bro.
accent.
What's going on?
Where did
Is he
Glen
getting into
go?
character?
It's gathering momentum.
Glen, are you there?
Yes, still here. So yeah,
Chapter
I
recap.
guess there's a few things that I did pick up with the chapter. So the chapter starts with a meeting that Stannis calls for all the men that are in consideration for assuming command now that Lord Mormont has died. And that's Bone Marsh, Dennis Mallister, Quarterpike, Aemon Targaryen is there, and Sam is there just as a guide for Aemon. And Sam does notice that Melisandre is very focused on him for some reason out of all the men in the room, and very curious about that. And just Stannis gives all the men an ultimatum that they must make a decision by the following night, because it's already been 9 nights where there has not been a Lord Commander chosen, and gives them an ultimatum that they must choose a Lord Commander on the 10th night, or it will be chosen by Stannis. After the meeting, Sam then goes between Quarterpike and Dennis Mallister, because the feeling that Sam is getting is that Janos Slynt is getting a lot of support, and it could be him, so rather than him, he would rather it be Quarterpike or Dennis Mallister. So first he speaks to Quarterpike, and Quarter just is very dismissive, says that it should be me, I've led armies, I'm a great fighter. So over Dennis Mallister, that's an old man. Then when he goes to Dennis Mallister, it was he's from an ancient family, he's been knighted, he's led commands, a long history of it. So, and plus he's got the upbringing to lead and intelligence to do so. So then, after he's getting nowhere with that, goes with a different approach and tries to use the two against each other and use their hatred for each other against each other. So he decides that, Sam tries to support Jon and says if someone else were to want to do it, would you support them? And then uses the same approach to both of them and says that Stannis has told Aemon Targaryen that he would, if a Lord Commander isn't chosen, then he will choose Quarterpike, and he says that to Dennis Mallister. Then he says the opposite to Dennis Mallister about Quarterpike, that he would be chosen for Lord Commander. And then that's the end of the chapter, and then we're led to believe that each of them throw their support towards Jon, and that leads to Jon's victory in the next chapter.
Spoilers.
And one thing that I was really, well, one thing that I thought when reading that is just his thoughts on Melisandre. Do we think there's anything more to that? Why she was so focused on Sam?
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? Because she, like, in her POV chapter and Dance with Dragons, she, like, brings up Jon a lot, but never Sam.
Yeah.
I think she's one of those characters that, like, if you're talking to her or interacting with her directly, she's just so intense and focused on you that you can read into it that there's more going on there. Because pretty much everyone who we get their POV, like, has this weird, unsettling feeling about Melisandre.
Yeah.
And she's red and hot, like hot, not hot, like she's just hot.
Isn't she both?
I don't know, maybe.
So I don't know.
saying she's hot.
I'm just, I mean, a few of us, I'm assuming a lot of us have met one person in their lives that are so intense that you are kind of, you don't know if they're actually into you or they're just intense. And we assume that Melisandre is at least very intense, right?
Yeah.
So that could just be it. I mean, also, he did kill a White Walker, right?
And they believe him too.
Yeah.
Mm.
Is it like her being like, you've seen the other kind of thing, trying to figure it out?
Maybe, yeah, I think so.
That's a good one. Never thought of that. So we all know Sam's smart. Did we ever think he was this clever?
Yes.
Not too clever.
Not until I read the chapter.
Right. Like, I didn't expect this kind of level of cleverness until, like, this chapter came in.
I think it's also, what's the benchmark? Like, he's trying to manipulate people, but they're not... Even the worst of them has a certain low cunning, but they're not the brightest, people around. So I don't think he needs to have extensive experience in political machinations to be able to pull this off.
Yeah, it's more over getting confident about it because he knows I think we know he's smart enough, but it's more just doing it and using his brief courage to actually get it done than he does.
It really reminded me a lot of when Tyrion becomes Hand, and there's a few of these, but the example I always think of is the one where he plants the idea of Marcella being sent away to see who's the one who's the snitch.
Yeah.
And, it's not like Tyrion's ever done any kind of meaningful day's work in his life or really used his smarts to do anything political, but he knows he's smart and he can get it done. And I think the same's true of Sam. So if one finds Sam incredible as a political operator here, I think you would have to make the same kind of accusation at Tyrion. And what also really jumped out at me is just not knowing Sam's age. For whatever reason, maybe because of the show, I'd always just assumed he was kind of 17 like Jon and very young and naive, and maybe that's influenced by his virginity and my kind of modern assumptions about that, which are very unfair maybe. But after all, Sam could be older, right? I mean, he could be a fair amount older and therefore more experienced and more worldly wise on politics than we think.
I always thought he was older because, or like the same age as Jon, because doesn't he have to be disinherited? Like he was about to become like the man of Hornhill?
Jon by maybe a year.
Oh, so he's 18, you think? Like,
well, I was doing
So
some
similar
research on the Game of Thrones wiki, and it has, and Westeros.org, and they have ages for a lot of people, but there's no age against Sam.
No.
I have another thought, which
I'm
is
sure it's mentioned in the first book that he's 15, but Jon was 14.
Oh.
Here's the encyclopedic brain again.
Interesting.
How many podcasts have I been on, Glenn? Go.
Enough that your name's really big in the word bubble thing?
That's all that matters.
Oh, okay. So according to iceandfire.wikia.com, whoever runs that, he was born in 283 AC, so that makes him 17. So he is Jon's age.
Boom.
Someone's getting it wrong on the interwebs.
Somewhere there's a nerd flipping their table right now.
How dare she say something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Another question. Why doesn't Melisandre know what Aemon knows about Lightbringer having to be hot? In other words, does she truly believe in the sword?
Well, we know she doesn't, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's my point. Like, how does... I mean, wouldn't she know that, given that Aemon knows it? And...
How many blind geniuses are going to call her out on it, though? Like, it's not too many out there.
True.
I don't think she ever expected on her being called out on that specifically. I mean, she basically is the authority on real lore and whatever in the Westeros, right? So she basically, what she says is a law, right? So
I know Thoros is doing pretty good for himself. He keeps on bringing back people from the dead.
Yeah, but he's not like going about promoting himself like she is. So,
yeah, that's true.
So
he actually says like he's been a bad priest in the past.
Yeah, promotion wise, she's doing a better job with the spin. And I don't think she was expecting getting challenged on that one. But I think maybe she might have known, or maybe she just didn't care about that specific thing.
Yeah.
As it is a glamour, right? It's a glamour, and she's just doing this so that she's lending credence to the whole that he has some sort of divine guidance, right? it doesn't really matter that much that it's not the real one. It's just that people surrounding him and himself believes that he is the chosen one.
True that. And then my final note was continuing the theme of self-deception and smugness. Stannis' self-deception to me is astounding. Like, he's all, I can take the lands, but give them to me freely, as if that's not coercion. It just strikes me that he's being very willfully obtuse or very, I don't know, equivocal. Like, I think he genuinely thinks he's being generous and righteous.
Oh, he does, I think.
And that is just, yeah, he's not helping.
He's thinking of the big picture, though. Like, he's just trying to get this shit in the north wrapped up as quickly as possible so we can, like, go down. Like, if you knew, like, the war is 1,000 miles away, he's got to get back there, and he's stuck here for, like, 2 weeks with these bickering guys about who's going to lead, you know, this. Like, he just wants to get it done with, which I understand, but, like, he's got to let them do it their way.
So, do you think they would have accepted his choice had he had to anoint someone as Lord Commander?
They would not have given the choice, the chosen person, a lot of slack, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, my answers are just so great that nobody responds to them. It's just fantastic being me.
You just shut it down.
Yeah.
Oh, anything else on this one, though? Any notes from anyone?
I always thought that when reading it that it wouldn't actually work if it was a real election. So because people talk, and eventually if Cotterpike was to say throw all his support towards Jon, then Dennis Mallister, like, because he did it first, then Dennis Mallister would think, oh well, he's already did that, so I've been outsmarted, so I'll just continue and get my own support.
Yeah, but they wouldn't know that until after the count, right? So if both of them go all in on Jon and Jon's elected, no one actually knows, you know, that there was another vote, right?
Yeah, there wasn't any social media at that point. I mean,
Yeah. I guess I've just never worked out how it would, like, how they would do that, how they would, you know, announce that they're no longer running, and it's not like they could do it at the same time. And
but it was it like that? Was it like they announced that they weren't running, or was it like they just
you would just announce to everyone around you that, you know, you're no longer running for it, you're no longer.
Well, I think there was some.
And then
I thought it was more like throw your support behind Jon rather than voting for me.
Yeah, I think they just talked to the people that was declared for him and saying that, well, it might be more useful to you know, vote Jon.
Yeah, because there's time between this meeting and then the ultimate choosing, and in that time, that's where Sam went between and, you know, convinced everybody to vote for Jon, basically.
That and the fucking Raven trick. Well done, Sam.
Spoilers.
So with that, we move from Sam 5 in the linear and published order to Jon 12, the final Jon chapter in A Storm of Swords, and it takes place on the same day. And I believe it is... Who is it with this chapter summary? Patrick.
Me.
Patrick. What accent are you choosing to do your chapter summary in today?
I don't know. I think I might do it in an American accent or something like that.
Oh, please do. That'll be hilarious.
Oh my god, what just happened to Patrick's voice?
I think you should do it in a real, like, Valley Girl accent as well.
Yeah, try to get the upspeak like that.
Like, oh my god.
Oh my god.
What did I miss?
Patrick's doing an American accent.
And then Jon was like, I don't want this, but Sam said you should totally do that.
What American is that?
I love it. I don't know.
So it's my simulation of a Valley Girl.
Okay.
But
like people from the Bronx talk like.
But no. Let's do a different accent.
I'm sorry I started this whole accent nonsense.
Okay. Just gonna have to warm my voice up for that. Jon plays at arms with Iron Emmett. Jon hadn't got much sleep, so that's why he got knocked on the head. In his days, he thinks back on the time on Winterfell and about Cat and might be projecting, but at least that's why he's knocking Emmett around when he wakes up from his dream. He goes to the bathroom and keeps telling himself that he's not worthy. He overhears Bowen Marsh, Alistair, Othel Yarwick, talk about the candidates for commander. He leaves and looks at the rest of the battle and realizes he wants to be Lord of Winterfell, but also realizes that that Ghost is nearby. They reunite and all is good. They go towards the mess hall and meet Stannis' soldier on the way. When he arrives, he finds out that his name has been put forth. Janis is not pleased, but the whole hall in general and Othel seems to entertain the idea of going non-slint. The men call for vote, and as they bring up the voting kettle, I did not know it was a thing. A raven flies out, circles around, and finds Jon, calling him by his bastard name. Sam says it's a first edition Marmont Raven, but Thorne doubts its authenticity, only to be immediately disproven by the Raven's vocabulary. He's elected. Jon is elected Lord Commander, and after the obligatory congratulatory death threats, he ventures towards King Stannis to let him know that the commander has been elected. Glen and Pip marvels over Sam's ability to train ravens, but Sam doesn't want to have anything to do with that. That's the end.
Do you guys know Jack Palance?
Yes.
I think that's what he's like. Believe it or not. Anyway,
entertain this. A single man sitting in a tower, contemplating becoming Lord Commander or just Lord. It's all in the Twilight Zone. Yeah.
So when you all read this for the first time, did you feel a feeling of triumph or nervousness for Jon? Like, what were your emotions, if you can remember the first time when you realized this was what had happened?
Huh.
That was a fuck yeah moment, right? For me, at least.
Yeah, for me, 100%. It was like, yeah, go Sam. Dolores said for the win.
Mostly just like the Raven flying towards Jon and perching there. And it's like, this is a very, it has a lot of value, like imagery rise that Raven chooses him. So
yeah, it's true, but like I felt like it was very contrived, like how surprised Sam was that there was a raven in like the kettle or whatever. Like it just seemed, but yeah, it is a fuck yeah moment. Like when all the brothers are like, "Oh, I hope it doesn't mean I can't beat the shit out of you in the training yard," or like, "Do you want to eat with us or eat alone?" Like, I think it was a good moment for everyone.
Mm.
But it's much like before we get to Dance with Dragons, this is like Rob's becoming King of the North, where it's like, fuck yeah, how's this going to end horribly? Okay.
I don't know though, because when Rob was made King of the North, I mean, I couldn't possibly have predicted the Red Wedding, but I still had this feeling of foreboding just because it was so kind of forced upon him by these kind of like very dull men, like dull-witted men. And I just felt that even by that point in the story, he was a little bit out of his depth. He was the little boy gone south. And maybe because from Kat's perspective, she was always saying stuff like, oh, he just looks like a little kid and he's putting on a brave face for them, but he looks out of his depth. Whereas this felt to me like a less tainted triumph. It was more straightforwardly, oh, well done, Jon.
So you're calling the people at the wall that are thieves and rapists better than the nobility of the North? I take great umbrage with that. Calling the umbers.
You can take all the umbrage you like, mate, but let's face it, they're all a bunch of thickos, aren't they? Because I mean, they don't give him the best tactical advice. They're very hot-headed. Whenever Rob does something that they don't like, they go off and do stuff against him. Yeah.
But Roose Bolton was against them from the beginning. Isn't that like Janos and Thorne being against Jon from the beginning?
Yeah, and? So? What? Who?
I don't know. I was making a comparison.
I don't know. Sorry. Oh, I don't know. Maybe we should talk about something else. We really don't have a lot to say about these 4 chapters, man.
I mean... We already
chapters compared to the rest of the chapters in the book.
Yeah, and we already got the whole Vatican Pope election thing out of the way, so that's not much more for me to talk about in this specifically, other than Alistair Thorne and Janos Slynt not being good losers.
Janos Slynt is the fucking worst, isn't he? Like,
he is the worst.
He's a miserable fuck.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to say spoilers, but I'm looking forward to when that whole thing is getting.
You mean Ed, fetch me a block?
Yeah.
Most badass line ever.
Yeah. That's gonna be good. It's gonna be great.
Would it have been better for John and the North if he had just gone to Winterfell?
Short-term
probably.
Not long-term.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like, again, he would have turned again, and not only that, he would have forsaken his, or at least felt like he's forsaken his gods by burning down the heart tree. I mean, it would be difficult for him either way.
Do you think he really would have had to burn down the heart tree? Because we see in Dance of Dragons, like they just start making their own. Like they start carving up like oak trees. Like it's not like the weirwoods are sacred to them, but they will make do with whatever they have because like that is their religion, no matter what they promise.
Yeah, but then again, I think Melisandre really wants that tree gone. She's like, oh my god, that must be so magic. Just throbbing with magic.
Throbbing with magic? Oh my god.
I mean, everything magical for her is sexual also. You have to realize that. She is a very focused on anything magical, really.
She's a woman of her time.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like John would have been fucked either way. I mean, at least now he's keeping some of his reputation in order. But I don't know.
But isn't this like the story arc that we all expected? No, I mean, I know we just talked about it, but now I'm thinking that Lord Mormont made him was grooming him for leadership, like Sam says, that. So we expected this would happen eventually, right?
Yeah, but we also thought that was pretty much out of the window when Mormont was killed because John didn't have really a lot of allies.
He had Sam the Magic Man.
Yeah, Sam the Magic Man, Sam the Slayer, Slay of Lies.
Although really, John's reaping what he sowed. In other words, Sam came to the wall and was utterly on the margins, and because of John, he's become this guy who can wheel a deal and be respected and sway people. So it's nice. It's like payback in a good way.
Yeah, until the other things happen. That's so nice.
That's how John sent Sam away. I feel John
sends all his allies away, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's just a mistake.
So Sam is John's lucky feather.
He's like his direwolf. He's the thing that keeps him safe.
Big fat direwolf.
Also, if you think about that, then it's weird that John has like a connection to wolves and Sam has a connection to a huntsman, right?
Yeah.
We just need a little Red Riding Hood, and we've got a complete story.
What's House Tollett's motto or icon? Sigil.
It's just an elongated sigh.
Yeah. Why do you have such a big mouth? Yeah, I know.
So it's kind of amazing to me that out of all the discussion we've ever had on the whole of A Storm of Swords, this just sort of feels like a bit almost like an anti-climax. Like, okay, John's crowned, move on.
Well, they're pretty straightforward. There's no like dream sequences that we can like really deep dive into. It's just
there is his thought about Catelyn and him being because he's a bastard born, he can't be Lord Commander when he remembers that.
Just thing. More Cat being the best person ever, and we're not,
Stepmom of the Year award.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand a lot of her feelings, but I mean, as one person that now makes it a part of his work to deal with kids and their development, I don't think that was the best choice for her to do. Like, I mean, it feels like she's sort of missing the point of child rearing, whatever. I mean, it's not only your own kid you need to do a part for. You also need to do whoever they play with, so that they grow up all to be nice people. I don't know. That's not very nice. That's one of his only memories of her is like her being not
the worst.
The worst, and basically corrupting his playmates' mind towards him. That's not cool.
Okay, so that brings us quite swiftly and bizarrely to the end of A Storm of Swords, a book that we had our first chapter from on a podcast episode on December the 6th, 2016. So it's taken us just over a year to read through it, which is actually bizarrely quick because it's a massive book. So to give you a sense of how the books have compressed over time, especially for an author who was considering doing a 5-year gap at the end, Game of Thrones had 73 chapters and covered 18 months from the middle of June 297 to January 299.
Only 18 months?
Yeah, well, it gets worse, right?
Jesus.
A Clash of Kings had 70 chapters, so it's actually slightly shorter, and went from January 299 to October 299, so just 10 months. So from 18 to 10 months. And then A Storm of Sword had 82 chapters, so definitely the longest, and it went from September 299 to February 300, so just 6 months. So he's had more time. Yeah,
Wow.
it's a slow crawl, right?
It's less than like 3 years since like in
I
book
always thought
time.
it was 1 year per book.
No. Although, in fairness, the start of Game of Thrones, when it's 18 months, there's some Dany stuff that happens, and then, like, nothing happens for 3 or 4 months, so... But yeah, the book started in June 297, and we're now in February 300. So all of that has happened in basically not very long.
Oh,
That is weird.
So I find it
Have we
interesting, like,
reached,
the concept of a 5-year gap. I can see why he would have wanted it, because he's ground to a halt. 82 chapters for 6 months.
That is insane.
yeah.
And you could see the 5-year gap from just wanting to be able to tell like the story of like people having adult feelings rather than like trying to sexualize like 11-year-old Arya or something.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Again, yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, I completely agree with that. I mean, there is merit to that, but as in the discussion before as well, I feel concerned about a few things, but ultimately I try to close my eyes to that and just assume that at some point George has the best idea of what his story is meant to be. Hopefully.
Yeah. But when you have this kind of epic, and he's doing literally in A Storm of Swords, he's done a chapter every 2 days of those 6 months.
Yeah.
It's going to be a while getting his back together again. Anyway,
Oh my god.
we will discuss this and lots of other things on the next episode of the Reread. It's actually just going to be a retrospective of Storm of Swords, hosted by Sarah Lady Weaver, and they're going to discuss lots of things like the pacing of the book. Is it one of the best books? We already did a whole chapter on Rob, so other topics such as the rise of House Tyrell, the impact of Jaime and Sam as new POV characters, the introduction of Dawn, and the major deaths and things that happen at the end of the book, and really the decision that George seems to have taken to really scatter some of his characters into new directions. So I think that's going to be a really interesting discussion, open-ended, with lots to get our teeth into.
Yeah, I really enjoyed our discussion about Rob, and I like the kind of 1,000-foot perspective discussions that VOK has sometimes.
But maybe I can close out this episode by asking you all, maybe not Glen as much, but Matt and Patrick, you've been on several episodes of the Reread, and from the beginning, do you feel that reading Storm linearly has made any difference? And I won't feel insulted if you say no.
In comparison to some of the other books, I mean, I feel like, especially in the first book, when it's so tight and everything was moved around, I mean, there's a few things that, or I feel, it was more obvious for me in the Game of Thrones, but also because I maybe was more aware of it to begin with. It feels more natural now to go like, okay, this is this and this is, and also is a lot longer since I've read the books, reread the books in the original thing. Yeah, so in general, just no, not actually as much than with Game of Thrones because of several reasons.
I think what you're just saying, Bina, about it, like kind of spiraling, like expanding, sending people out to all various points of this world. It does start to be like a little difficult to do this linearly, just because there'll be chapters separated by like almost half the book sometimes. Like there'd be like a Daenerys one that's like at the very beginning of the book that's supposed to follow something that's like midway through the book, and it just, I don't know. I think it's more shocking just like how, if we do this in order, how interesting, I guess, it was for George to make the decisions to put the chapters where they were.
guess I remember Clash of Kings as being where everything happens with Rob, and you got the delayed news and everything. I think that was very apparent with the chronological reading rather than here, whereas everything is so close to each other as well. So I think in general, now that I've gathered my thoughts, that it's basically mostly because of Clash of Kings that feels different this time.
I feel that with Storm, like you're right, internally to Storm, because the chapters are so densely packed, it makes less difference apart from like where the Danny ones come. But what is interesting is when you start interweaving the feast and dance ones, how early they come in these books, and to a sense, maybe that's made me appreciate Dawn a little bit more, because you just realise that Doran's setting things in motion a little bit earlier. It's not quite so after the fact. So I kind of like the way the books interweave, and I had really thought this would be, we do Storm and then there's Feast Dance, but actually Feast Dance and Storm really do overlap for quite some time, and I think that's been kind of interesting.
Yeah. I was surprised about that too, but I also kind of enjoyed seeing that, like Dorn's, involvement, some of these new POV involvements do happen during like kind of, I don't know, I guess the established story, if we could call the first 3 books that.
So I have a question actually. When we are about to reach the end of the linear reread and we don't have another book to start on, do we do like a special spoiler linear reread?
Oh, what, in terms of putting the TWOW chapters in?
Yeah, exactly.
Cross that bridge when we come to it. I mean, I think we're currently on episode 63, and I think there's about 99 scheduled. So I think that this is not a problem we have to face for about another year and a half, and I'm really hoping there's some big news by then.
Well, when that is not the case, let's just start thinking about it now, right? Okay, because I'm assuming that it's not going to happen.
Wow.
Was there not a predictions podcast? I'm sure something was planned. I don't know if it actually happened.
We'll have to do something whereby we do the TWOWs in kind of standalone chapters and slot them in vaguely where they go in, and allow people who don't want to listen to that stuff to not listen to that stuff, I think.
Yeah, because we've done individual reviews of each preview chapter, haven't we?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I kind of like the way that Adam Dransnow handled it in his recent reread episode number 59, where they did the main chapters, and then because it's, when you get to a certain family, it really alters your feelings about them if you know the TWOW chapters.
Yeah.
So he did that in the after show, and I think that was a very good and sensible way to handle it. So maybe, if a TWOW chapter falls within, say, 3 canonical chapters or published chapters, then you can do that one in the after show so that people can make those connections, but dial off if they don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Any good ideas, please let me know, people. It's not an obvious one. Do you guys have any forthcoming episodes you'd like to pimp out?
I would like to get the Psycho Sickos together to do Mindhunter, but that's on the back burner. I have no burning desire to get it done immediately.
Oh, okay. Glenn, do you have anything coming up?
Yes, I have done done a review of one of the episodes of Black Mirror, so that should be
cool.
out soon. And then
Which
we're
one?
planning to Hang the DJ season 4.
Is that controversial or
dating.
something?
So it's all about dating apps, and they have this own futuristic dating app where it just tells you who your match is, and then it forces people together for, could be 1 day up to like 5 years that you would be with
Jesus.
that person. Then there's another one that I'm planning to do as well. Once this one's done, there's the final episode. It's sort of like an anthropology episode that I really liked.
Of Black Mirror?
The final episode of season 4.
I don't think I finished season 3, so the last one I saw was the one that won the Emmy.
Oh yes,
the one about the death. Yeah, that was a good. That show's fucked up, man.
Yeah,
So depressing, it really is, and also because it's such a believable future. Ugh.
What were you asking, Bina?
Have you got any podcasts coming up that you want to advertise?
There are plans, there are murmurings. We did we did a game called The Loop of Death or Loop of Doom. we did several rounds to pick out the most iconic 90s songs for us. We boiled it down to 10 different songs that we might do a podcast about, just about what our feelings about the songs and stuff. We have a few people that was born in the 90s, so they are like late 90s, so they might not have too much to say about it other than, well, whatever. So it might be interesting. It's still in the early stages though. So
Can you give us any spoilers on a couple of the songs?
if you like Radiohead, you won't be disappointed.
Oh, nice. And I do. I saw them in 95 open up for Alanis Morissette at Jones Beach.
Well, with that, I'll formally close out the episode. Thank you very much for joining me. Thanks also to Greg and Amber, who had to leave already, but thank you also to Glenn, Patrick, and Matt for sticking around. Bye, guys.
Of course.
Thank you. Bye.
Cool.
Cool.
Leave status alone.
Hello.
Hello, Gaffer.
All right, Dick Van Dyke.
Chim chimney chim chim chiroo.
Leave status alone.
Report.
Hello?
Yay!
All right. I would say something, but Matt will make it into something dirty, so I'll just say I had to put it in a different USB port.
Oh, that makes me happy.
Leave status alone.
We are here today to discuss the final 4 linear chapters in A Song of Ice and... Not in A Song of Ice and Fire. In a song...
That's not what I was told.
That's not right.
That's not right. In a
All right, Bina's done.
Nothing.
You guys hear me okay? I haven't used my headset in months.
Yeah,
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay.
A
cool.
little grainy, but
Fuck off.
If you can make yourself louder in some way, that would be awesome.
Fuck off.
Leave status alone.
Sounded good to me.
Oh,
It sounded okay.
Podcast
That's all
like
that matters.
Amber.
Hello.
I can
I
go
didn't
again
read
and do it in a
shit.
British accent if you want, but it's...
How are you, Amber?
Good. Went to our little chorus retreat, did the electric slide, came home at 2 a.m.
Oi.
You're how old are you? I forget. You're 12?
41?
she
Really
just
like to
turned.
slide
Her
in
birthday
that
was
one
just the
joy.
other day.
I was being sarcastic.
Your ears should have been
Supposed to say,
burning.
like 25.
Your ears must have been burning earlier today because I was having lunch with Neil and Nadine, so Erinese from the
Aw.
forums, and we were talking about your big trip and everything cool that we have to do when you're over here. So
My big trip. It's so many things.
World Moot 2018.
Yes.
London, Vassals coming in from France, from Germany, maybe Denmark, from Seattle. I know Casey's
Very
wanting to come all
exciting.
over. Let's make it happen, people. Well,
Patrick, are you going?
22nd, weekend on the 22nd, Patrick.
I'll take that.
He's
as-
off.
as a
He's
no.
off raiding villages.
Patrick's gone. He has to, raid villages to get the money to come over.
Actually, yeah. But no, it's just I put myself on mute when I'm not talking. Weirdly
He's a
enough.
polite Viking.
Yeah. No, I was just saying maybe, yeah, cool. 22nd moved from the weekend before.
Because of Viking Con. So
Yeah,
we're
well-
I'm accommodating you.
That's cool. That's cool. Very, very possible. I mean, it is. A lot of things need to fall in line. I mean, maybe I could talk
wife
to
and
some
the
of my
kid.
wife. Yeah, that also. But also, I could talk to maybe my wife's family and something to be accommodated there or something like that because money is not plentiful at the moment.
Wait a minute. Don't you have 2 kids? How,
Exactly.
Not working yet? Don't you put them to the mines and once they hit 2?
No, they have to use at least the first 5 years training with swords and that.
Nice. Probably wise.
Anyway, people, Vassals, there will be some kind of mootedness going on in London, 22nd of October. You've been warned. You have plenty of time to send your kids down the mines and get here. So make it happen, people.
Yeah.
You can also mention Ice and Firecon's coming up at the end of April. There's still tickets available and rooms for anyone who is not in Denmark or closer to Virginia or Ohio, where it is this year.
Yeah, but is Amber going to be there? Because if Amber's not going to be there, then I don't know what the attraction is.
Amber seems to
was
go
really
if you're there, Beaner. So Bina. Sorry. Matt's a Beaner, you're
A
Bina.
beaner.
A
I was
Bina.
really going to try this year, but then World's Moot takes precedence.
Leave Stannis alone.
Any thoughts, Glenn, on the chapter?
Oh, sorry. No, not yet.
The suspense was just brilliant, though. The tension. What is he going to say? It's going to be magical.
No.
Amberrocks, anything?
No.
She's
Hello,
twice
Gaga.
as long as Glenn now.
Stupid iPhone Skype is stupid. No.
Leave Stannis alone. You know, we always talk about Tyrion being like misrepresented by Roy the Trees, and we talk about I don't know, a lot of people. But do you guys remember the voice he does for people with like stupid people, like the lispy voice he does sometimes? He does it also for Vargo Hoat.
Well, he had a lisp, right? Wasn't
Yeah,
that in the books?
but he basically reuses that for who was it?
Small.
Cutter Pike in this one as well. And I was like, God, I mean, it does make him sound a lot less, agreeable. Also,
For all like the crap people give Roy the Tree, like I'm a defender, I enjoyed those audiobooks, but when you do get a narrator that has more range, like I'm listening to the First Law books because White Raven recommended them, and Stephen Pacey does everything Roy Dotrice does, but times 10. Like his women sound like women, and he has like 10 different accents and all these different, and it's much better. Like if he had done these books, I assume we wouldn't have like the pirate or leprechaun, debate.
Greg, I just started that last night. Yay!
Oh, you're doing the audiobooks too?
The First Law, yeah.
Yeah, Brett. I wouldn't shut up about the the Scott Baker book, so he's like, just read these. They're so much better.
Also, I mean, I don't know if you guys heard about Critical Role, which is like an online show about role playing, where there's the one running that is a seasoned voice actor, and he does like Matthew Mercer. He's like really, really good as a person that also, at least when he runs campaigns, whatever, tries to do voices once in a while. I can't do anything but just sit back and be in awe of his skills. But then again, I hope I never. Sometimes I feel more like a Roy Dotrice than I seem like a Matt Mercer kind of type.
I really like the John, not John Avers who did Feast for Crows, the John before that.
John Lee?
No, maybe it is John Avers that did the prior books and John Lee did Feast for Crows.
Yeah, John Lee did Feast for Crows before they went back and redid it with Dotrice.
John Avers is my audiobook guy. He's great.
I don't think I've ever heard him.
Oh, let me see if I can pull him up. I don't know how this will go over in audio. Hold on.
Yeah. I also like the one who did the.
Midas was shuffling amongst them with flagons of goat's milk
Can
and
you hear
green
that?
wine, but Maester Aemon had not yet returned from his morning call on Mance Raider.
He sounds like a 1950s newscaster.
I know, I love it.
But even as he fetched and poured and changed and dressing,
Yeah, that's like for your consideration.
Also, he's American. Do that
Yeah.
in a British accent. That's unacceptable. Get that out of there. I don't want to hear that anymore.
Leave Stannis alone. So yeah, that's it. I mean, other than we just talked, I thought there was common knowledge that the wall was both magical but also anti-magical in a
Maybe
way.
it is, and I'm just like very thick to not figured it out yet. I don't know.
What do you guys think about what do you think the properties are of the wall? Have you had any sort of ideas about it?
Ice and Magics.
Okay. Okay, cool. How about you, Bina?
Yeah, no, well, I don't know. I mean, I was evidently surprised when he mentioned that today, so evidently it hadn't occurred to me yet.
But you could have had other thoughts. I mean.
No, I didn't. I had confusion.
Okay, I'm glad that I could maybe dispel some of that confusion.
Yeah.
Glenn, how about you? You're pretty well informed. Oh, okay.
And a little shy.
Very shy.
Oh, thoughts on what the wall is made of?
Yeah, what have you had any thoughts about its properties, like what it's about in general?
Well, I've always, it's there as like a device that, it's this unstoppable force keeping everything, all the bad guys away. So eventually something must happen that will destroy it, or
Yeah.
I always thought that, actually I wouldn't say anything, but something that happens in the TV show, I've always thought that would happen.
Don't. Yeah. So you're saying that basically that the White Walkers is the unstoppable force and the wall is the immovable object.
Yeah, that's stopping them from getting past. So something has to happen to that wall.
Or the force.
Yes.
But in the books, it's very confusing, I guess, because we haven't really seen, the Fist of the First Men is like the only battle scene we've seen between the others and like humans. Like, do you think if like the brothers got their shit together, it seems like they could take out the others pretty easily?
Mm-hmm.
You think?
I mean,
because
depends on how many there are, right?
Well, I think they were surprised at the Fists of the First Men, but if they're firing like obsidian arrows and shit like that, I think they would have been like pretty handily like repelled that attack. So I'm thinking like anything that happens at the wall, it should be kind of dealt with quickly.
Yeah, at least if they get the obsidian arrowheads and whatever, then yeah, sure.
But what's interesting to me is like the kind of end around game that seems to be happening at Hardhome, where like the Counterpike's like they're dead things in the water, and like so can they just kind of skirt around the wall or something? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that something has to happen for that to actually to be a real threat, and we've talked about that in a few episodes ago when we talked about the appearance of Euron.
You know what has to happen? The fucking book needs to be published.
That's true. At least
true.
One
true.
or two books.
So painful.
It's not really painful anymore. It's like keep hitting on a exposed nerve. At some point, that nerve will die.
Yeah, but every now and then, like I don't do every reread, but the ones I do participate in, like rereading the chapters, is like, oh fuck, like this is why these books are so fucking good.
Yeah.
Like, and then you get all back into it and fanboy, and like it's like, oh shit, he still is just posting about his newest wild card stuff, or
even Greg was saying that, right? It's like, I know I've been so down on on George lately, and like I don't even care about the new book, but I've been reading these chapters and they're so good, and I just want TWOW now.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing, right? Like
a lot of people have said on the forums about the upcoming book, and I guess I don't know if you would agree, but the first 3 books are of a better quality from the 4th and the 5th book. So
I personally don't agree with that.
Well, actually, I think that book 4 is actually better than the first 2 books, but generally people do think that the first 3 books are better than the 4th and the 5th.
Well, I do think that the first 3 books have completed story arcs.
True.
John has gone to the wall and now is Lord Commander. Like Rob was, Crown King of the North, won battles, and then Red Wedding resolved. Cat's Day resolved. Like I feel like they're very tight. And my problem with especially A Dance with Dragons was that. And I'm starting to actually warm up on Feast a little more, but with Dance for Dragons, it was like, holy shit, this took him, 5 years to get out, even though like he had most of this stuff written down, and it could have been pared down so much, and it's just like, oh, Jesus, like, I get the world building stuff, and like I get it, but it just seems like an editor could have been able to take that. Down for a few chapters, or like where it leaves off, where neither of those 2 stories really has an arc, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe Victarion has a full arc because he loses the Queen's or Kingsmoot and then makes it to Essos, or I'm not really sure who makes a full story, because like there's all these battles that have to come to resolve all these stories, and they have to happen in the winds.
Yeah, that's my main problem. I mean, I don't feel like, as of yet, that Dance of Dragons has made a you don't have a sense where at least that we're going towards it, and we've passed the midpoint, which we have. We've been past that for at least 1.5 book, right?
Yeah.
We don't have the sense that it's been passed. We still feel like we're in the second act of this story, basically.
It still
or
feels
third.
centrifugal. Like it just feels like there's more and more characters. The story's getting wider and more dispersed, and people aren't yet coming back in again. And I guess TWOW, once the Battle of Marine is over, is when it starts to kind of spin back inwards again. But one can only hope.
Yeah, I hope we get a sense of direction after like the first few chapters in TWOW, because otherwise I'm concerned about where things are going. But leave Stannis alone.
Mina, have you watched Britannia?
So this is interesting. So I was talking to Matt about this because it's on. You can download all the episodes on Sky.
Yeah, that's right.
So I've watched kind of 3 and a bit just before doing this podcast, and I'm sort of into it a little bit, but not really. But I kind of want to persist because it's Rome and it should be something I'm into, and I really like the actress who plays Kira, Kelly. What's her name? Not Kelly MacDonald.
Riley.
Oh, is this,
Kelly
is
Riley.
This,
That's it. Yeah, this is the Romans invade Britain, come up against Druids kind of thing. But it's just, I don't know. There are bits that I like, and I'm really struggling. How about you? What do you think of it?
I thought that the first episode, I was watching the first episode, and sort of it was okay, but it wasn't that great. But I think I'll give it a chance. Hopefully, it will get better. I was watching half of episode 2 today, and it was a much better because it was a shorter episode.
Yeah, the first one was like movie length. I will probably try and persist just because it is that period of history that I like. But yeah, it's a little bit kind of sub HBO Rome, sub Game of Thrones. I don't know. I think
the thing that stands out as well is the Hound Arya relationship between. I can't even remember their names.
Oh my god, that's exactly what I was saying to Matt, that there's this like little girl who's on her own and she's quite sweary and tough, and then there's kind of like this quite blackly funny rando guy who she's sort of traveling around with. And yeah, it was very it's like they said, what did viewers really connect with in Game of Thrones? Let's try and replicate it. So yeah.
They also promoted in Denmark as do you have Game of Thrones withdrawal? Then watch Britannia. So yeah.
I mean,
I think it's a partnership with Amazon Prime though, so Americans should be able to get it at some point soon.
It is. I mean, this is show related, but that's some bullshit that we have to wait another year for the next season, for the final season. God damn it!
Oh yeah.
I don't care. Leave Stannis alone.
Oh yeah. All right. Now Glen's God, we could be bad.
Leave Stannis alone.
I wanted to bring this up while Greg was still here, but so the other night I fell asleep listening to the audiobook of Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
And I had a dream that Christopher Lee played Tom Bombadil, but he was in like a 70s like yellow hat and yellow patent leather shoes. Cool. And a blue like shirt, and he'd just be like ring-a-ding-dillo.
Leave Stannis alone.
It's good to see that Glen's into Feast for Crows because it gives me hope that someone will volunteer to be on the Feast chapters.
and I kind of am too, because I re-listened to the audiobook and I'm like, well, fucking Jamie's chapters
are insane. So good.
Are probably the best, some of the best things like that he's written. Like just that character development and character, 180.
Yeah, it's a turnaround. Definitely.
Yeah.
And you get such like pure notes of Tyrion when you read him sometimes, and you're like, God, I mean, if you
it's
just
that sarcastic, entitled, like kind of dickhead thing, but he's like humbled by his missing hand.
Yeah, exactly. If Jamie is as clever as Tyrion was, he's just never been forced to use his wits before, which is so weird. And it's like, why would I want to use my brain? I'm beautiful.
And I mean that's great stuff, because with Jamie Cersei you get the rise of religious militancy in Westeros.
Yeah.
There's really good stuff in Feast. It's just you do get a lot of Brienne just wandering around aimlessly, but I feel that Dance I really struggle with, but Feast.
But
I agree with Glen. I think Feast is good.
That whole side story could have been like a short story, just not in this narrative. Like I would have loved to take in that journey, like outside of this like grander structure of the Song of Ice and Fire.
Brienne should just have been basically one of those Dany style chapters that goes over a few months and just goes boom as a prep. Then you get the one final chapter where she meets Lady Stoneheart.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I enjoyed that we saw her actually killing a person for the first time and how that made a difference for her. Like not really, like one of her first time actually killing a real person in that battle. I don't remember how exactly it was the one with the one wearing the hound helmet, right?
No, that was when she was getting her face bitten off. Before that, that was with Dick Crab and like the Bloody Mummies, and she killed a couple of them. But yeah, she like thanks her like master at arms or whatever at not Hornhill. Where the fuck was she from?
The Emerald Island, Tarth.
Sapphire Island.
Sapphire Island, yeah, Emerald Island. Sapphire Island, Tarth.
Yeah, but she's like, I didn't hesitate. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, when she's getting her face bitten, it like again.
2%.
I listened to the audiobook, and it's just like it's just like, oh my god, he's eating me. Like, oh.
Leave Stannis alone. Leave Stannis alone. Leave Stannis alone.